All right, this video update, the thumbnail's my daughter, well over a decade ago. She's grown up now, but I remember this face when she would look at something that just catches her eye, and that's kind of how I feel as I see these snow maps. The cold that's coming as we head into December, and I think we're in for a snowy one as we see a transition over to a much colder month, that chilly air building, and everything seems to be lining up, including what's happening with the MJO moving to phase 7 into phase 8, which means we're likely going to be below normal. You know, while I was looking for this picture, it reminded me of when my kids were much smaller. Check this out. This is some snow that we used to make at home. It's the home snow maker. It uses a pressure washer and an air compressor. And in this particular winter, I remember it was really cold, but we made enough snow in our own backyard to create some fun for the kids. So I think this year, many of you won't have to resort to making your own snow in your backyard. And many of the ski resorts are already cranking the snow out with some cold weather. Let's talk about the weather that we're going to see over the next couple of weeks or so. I do think it's going to get warm across the U.S. That cold is starting to build. I'm going to flip sources over to the 850 millibar chart, which gives a better clue for where that cold air is. It's not impacted by the warming and the cooling of the day. We do have a pretty decent shot moving into the northeast as we head into the weekend, but all the real cold is still up in here. And I think what we're going to see is with this blocking here across Greenland, you get the movement right here. You can kind of see it pushing north as you start to disrupt what's happening way up high into the Arctic, and that's going to start to dislodge. Boom, there it goes. You can kind of see it bending up as we get towards the 24th, the 25th, and the 26th. And I think you also open the door for the potential for some snowstorms somewhere here in the central part of the country as we round out the month. And as we start to see this transition, here comes the Arctic air. It's starting to get modeled out. I think you look out, because once we get toward the end of the month, especially into December, phase 7 and phase 8 are on the way for the MJO, and those patterns generally mean colder conditions most of the time in the north and even into the eastern part of the United States. And if we circle back into phase 1, it may warm back up. More to come on that. The long-term European weeklies have us blistering warm in the east, cold across the west. And by the way, it's going to get pretty unsettled out here with a lot of wind, rain, and snow on the way. It's going to get much colder, I think. And then look how the models are picking up on this cold, long range, starting to show up across a good part of the eastern and central U.S., not just across the west. We start to see that change up a little bit. This looks pretty cold to me. I think you got to get cold to get the snow. And anytime you can get cold in December, look out for some early season snowstorms. One thing that I'm looking at is this cold that's on the way in Europe. Kind of here's where we are now as we start to also see what's happening way up in the Arctic, stratospheric warming. It's pushing that cold into Europe, and usually when that happens, the cold will follow in the east. And I think that's what we're seeing here as we look into December. Again, this is 45-day snow totals. Take this, throw it away, do whatever you want with it. But I think the trend is interesting to watch. But watching the 7-day total shift is an interesting thing to see. Notice how we're starting to see more members reflect snow across the central U.S. I don't want you to get hung up on the totals here. Look at where it's printing the snow at, right? Now we're seeing a bit of a shift to the east and the north. And I think anywhere along this boundary, you could see some snow. It's going to really start to pick up across the mountains of the west. Maybe a bit of a break here across the central U.S. And then I think once we get into December, maybe January, we start to swing that back to the west as the pattern starts to shift up a little bit. Let's talk about where it's going to snow right now over the next couple of days and where it's going to rain too. And it's on the way into parts of Southern California. That rain could be heavy at times. Flood watches are up in many of these areas. Some heavy snow into the Sierra possible out of this. One system moving also toward the Hudson Bay, pulling some cold air down into the prairies of Canada. So colder temperatures on the way for Saskatchewan, into Manitoba, Minnesota, also into Wisconsin, in and around the Great Lakes. This cold air starts to push all the way down. You can sort of follow these lines into parts of the Midwest, into the Northeast too, with temperatures on the way down, with lake effect snow picking up, I think, by this weekend. And then we're watching the West. I mean, it's going to just start to stay really active out here. This one storm moves in, and then another colder system moves in as we head into Monday and Tuesday. I think this brings those snow levels down, and we start to get even more snow across the Southwest. Not a lot of precipitation falling so far this fall. We could start to be seeing that change take place before our eyes. And now you're cold in the west with your trough here. You've got a pretty good storm also swinging into Alaska by next Thursday. To me, this really signals the change that starts to take place. Your trough in the west, watch something here to form along this boundary. The GFS from this evening still trying to show something. If you went back to earlier today, It had a little bit more of a robust storm. I would probably trust this data more than what I just showed you. It's still trying to pick up on some kind of mid-latitude cyclone, picking up some strength as it cuts towards the Great Lakes. And then beyond this, it's all fantasy at this point anyway. But the trend, guys, is for colder temperatures across a lot of the U.S. And again, we're moving toward the end of the month. I think you watch these boundaries. The GFS is picking up on these pieces of energy that are riding along this. I think it's a snowy December. I mean, I'm going out on a limb here, guys, but the signals are here, just like the thumbnail. I feel like my daughter just looking at that snow map and these maps going, it's looking pretty. I'm feeling pretty confident about the cold. I don't think it's going to be cold over the next week, at least for a lot of you. A lot of unsettled weather moving into Southern California. Let's move in a little bit closer across the country. Here comes that snow into the Intermountain West, into the Utah mountains, Colorado, and then the snow levels drop across California, Nevada, into Utah, and into Arizona too. So places like Flagstaff, I think your snow chances are going up, especially into the northern mountains here of Arizona, and then into the Colorado Rockies, into the Wasatch. A pretty active time here. That cold air aloft is just going to trigger an active weather setup. Here's your temperatures as we head into Friday night, relatively mild, and another warm day, at least across the plains, but cooler weather on the way into the southwest as we see more clouds, and then temperatures do start to cool down in many areas across the Intermountain West as we head into next week. Look at next Thursday and Friday. It could be quite a bit colder out here with highs, even in the valleys, barely getting to 40. Across the central U.S. we go. Sunshine, high pressure, front to the north drops south. It's going to bring that cold shot of air into the Great Lakes. Otherwise, relatively quiet. Here comes the next precipitation maker. It's going to be on the way by the weekend. Sunday into Monday, lifting north into the Dakotas. You see this here? Northern parts of Iowa, southern parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, maybe Chicago. Are we looking at a little bit of snow? It's nothing like what we saw last time, but the European deterministic today is trying to print something out here. Here's a look at your temperatures heading into Friday. There comes that cold dropping into the Great Lakes and the upper Midwest. Low temperatures Sunday morning back into the 20s. It could be much colder, and it's already been much colder than this so far. It's just not going to be warming up much here over the next couple of days. If anything, it just kind of stays cold while we are baking across the southern plains into Texas in the 80s. Look at the Northeast. Cold, damp. Showers will be around, maybe a few showers into Friday night into Saturday across parts of West Virginia. And some of these storms into this region could get a little strong heading into Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening as this front drops to the south. Maybe some mixed precipitation too across parts of the Northeast, and some heavy snow trying to show up across parts of Maine, into parts of eastern Canada. Go further north. That snow could get pretty heavy at times. Take a look at the European print here. Boom, there it comes. Close to a foot of snow trying to show up here across the northern mountains of Maine, up into Quebec. Some of the snow could get heavy, and now we're dealing with some lighter lake effect snow behind this system as it pulls off to the east, further to the south. No big cool down on the way for the deep south into the mid-Atlantic. Here comes that next system skirting along our cold air boundary on the northern side of this. Is it going to be cold enough for some snow for you guys in Pittsburgh? All right, that's the afternoon European run. I'm going to show you the GFS just for kicks. It looks quite a bit different, but you see it. It's there. The cold air on the northern side of that creating a little bit of snow. More to go as we iron this time frame out in the coming days. Here's a look at your temperatures. That's Saturday. Let's look at Friday. Pretty warm, especially up here into central Illinois where we saw the snow. Into Indiana, it's going to be a distant memory with highs in the 60s. Once we head into the weekend, that warm air starts to surge even further to the north into Michigan. We're up into the 60s too, and up into D.C., close to 70. 70s pushing pretty close to Indianapolis as we get into Saturday. And then here comes the cold behind it. You can see how our front is dropping to the south. Temperatures falling behind it Sunday into Monday, staying relatively cool. And then the question is, here comes that system sliding pretty much east to west. Look at your dividing line. This is where your area of low pressure is going to want to move right along wherever your boundary is. It's pretty clear to see to me. More to come, though. Thanks for watching. See you next time.